It's time for Pure Performance.
Get your stopwatches ready. It's time for Pure Performance with Andy Grabner and Brian Wilson. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pure Performance. My name is Brian Wilson, and as always, my co-host, the one and only Andreas Grabner. Andy, I was going to call you Andreas Bremer, but I figured that was last week recording. So, how you doing?
Not too bad, actually. It's the first time in months that I'm not working from either my kitchen or from the Dynatrace office in Linz, where I've been to maybe 4 times now in September. But today I'm actually in Vienna. It's kind of like my first trip in COVID times. So very interesting. In a hotel room, like the old days, recording a podcast.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's wow. And when you say Vienna, besides thinking of, some of the foods and stuff and all, I think of Vienna Calling, which was, I forget who did that
Falco,
one. That was the song.
Yeah.
Did Falco do Vienna Calling? That was his too?
Of course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Who else? It was either Falco or Mozart, one of the two, right? And is there really much of a difference between Falco and Mozart, really, when you think about their genius? Anyhow, we got colder weather coming in. Let's talk about the weather. No, it's nice. It's cooling off here. It's just so awesome. I love falls and springs in Denver. We get nice cool evenings, warm days. So it's just really, the mood has changed from the oppressive heat to just some nice welcome weather. So I'm not traveling. I'm not in fancy Vienna. I'm not in a hotel room, but I am at least enjoying some of the outside a little bit this week and last. So that's where I'm at, Andy. Yeah. We're not here to, people don't really care how I feel, right? They might care about you. But I think they care more about the topics, right?
Exactly. And maybe as we've been talking about the weather, I wonder, asking Sebastian, how the weather in Hamburg is these days.
Yeah, the weather's great. So typically, stereotype, Hamburg is rainy, but the last days and today, sun is shining. So really enjoying the weather. And unfortunately not in a hotel, or luckily not in a hotel, working from home currently. The weather is really nice, especially for Hamburg at that time in the year.
I'd be really remiss, I'd be really shirking my duties if I didn't point out that there is a kind of a cookie called a Vienna finger, the dessert. And then Hamburg, obviously you have hamburgers. There's nothing really Denver, so I'm the only non-food. And it kind of shows because the food here is pretty bad. But I just had to point that out. And Hamburg! I think that's awesome that you're there, because being a big Beatles fan, that's where they got their start. Freaking legendary city, So that's some place I hope to visit it someday. And Andy, take over, please.
Yeah.
Shut me up.
Sebastian. So come in, like one more punt on Hamburg. Hamburg, obviously, for those people that have never been, have a big harbor, a lot of ships, a lot of containers being moved around on a day-to-day basis.
You're so clever, Andy. You're so clever.
Now, I just got this idea by listening into Sebastian's previous podcast that he actually did with the Kubernetes podcast with Google, where you were invited to actually talk about the company that you run. You are, CEO of Kubermatic. And I thought it was interesting because these two guys, Craig and Adam, they did a little, you told them a little story with being a port city. And then I think you had an event, a webinar, and you announced containers. And then was it a container company that actually ships physical containers? They registered, and you were wondering if they know that this is a software webinar and not a container webinar. Is that right?
We 5 years ago, when we started the company, we started a conference called Container Days, and so we will start promoting it. And one of the tickets we sold was sold to a container shipping company, and we were like, "Oh shit! Did they really understand the purpose of the conference? And it's software container and not real containers?" And so we called them and explained, "Hey, look, potentially." the conference is something different what you expect. And they said, no, we are from the IT department of the company, and we are really looking into IT containers. And we said, oh, good. Was quite interesting. And I mean, another funny story about Hamburg. So I'm CEO of Kubermatic, but formerly we were called Luzi, and why we choose the name was really like, I mean, we all know Docker, we know Kubernetes, helpsman of a ship, and so we were thinking, okay, we are from Hamburg, we know containers, real containers at least quite good, so let's stick to the pattern. And Lutze is a lower German word for navigation pilot of a ship, which comes like at the end when you go into the Haber. And we said, okay, that's pattern matching well. And so we said, okay, let's go with this name.
That's pretty cool. It's great that it's kind of, we all find our Nordic names for, not naughty, Nordic names for things that are related to Kubernetes. Sebastian, not sure if you know, but we've also launched an open source project in the Kubernetes space, in the CNCF space, and we call it Captain, because we kind of want to steer the containers safely into the next harbor, which we believe is production. So that's why, in case you want to read up on what we are doing, we also used the German phonetic version of a captain, so KEPTN. But back to you, Sebastian. The way we actually got introduced, I was actually invited to speak at one of your meetups that you run, the Kubernetes online meetup, and I think you have meetups around at least Germany, and I think around Europe, and maybe even around the world. And so we actually got to talk, and then I thought, wow, this is really interesting what these guys are doing, and especially the experience that you have in helping organizations automate Kubernetes and operate Kubernetes. But instead of maybe coming from my words, maybe you can give a quick introduction on which problems you have actually seen out there as organizations move to Kubernetes, and what problems you are solving with your company.
So when we started, I started really early with like Docker 0.5, something around. So we really started working with Docker and Kubernetes. Oh, it's 5 years ago, something around that, even more. So really early on the journey, and so we used it first for some own experiments, and we said, hey, that's really interesting. We want to do something with it. And then we started the company, and what we saw quite early is like Kubernetes is not easy. It makes a lot of things easier, but in general, the system, it's a distributed system. It's a quite complex system, and how everything works together is quite challenging. And so what we saw was like, hey, how can we help customers to really adapt this new modern ideas about cloud native, and how to use cloud native to build new modern products, but also how they could potentially move existing workloads to Kubernetes, and using us with our experts there to enable them. On the one side with trainings and consultings, but on the other side also we built a product, Kubermatic, which helps customers to really managing Kubernetes cluster across different cloud providers on-prem. Because what we saw from the beginning, like one of the biggest challenge was, how can I spin up Kubernetes cluster? At that time, the only cloud provider managed service which was available was GKE, and it was easy. You press a button, but we wanted to have the similar experience on mostly all providers, and so we came up with the idea: can't we build something like this? And we came up with the idea: can't we leveraging the operator pattern to manage this? And so our goal is really, how can we help and enable customers to use cloud native and moving into the cloud native world?
Mm-hmm. Now you bring up, I need to bring up another conversation I just had early today, because you said, from the outside, Kubernetes looks like this cool, very easy to use and operate platform. But then if you take a closer look at it, and especially you have done this for the last couple of years, you see how complex it is. Now, Brian and I, we both have a colleague who has been heavily, invested in PCF, in Cloud Foundry over the years, and I just have to quote him because he just mentioned this to me today. He said, "I don't understand why Kubernetes is so popular because it feels like we're making a step 5 years back as compared to the experience that some people had with PCF as a very opinionated platform. And I obviously, but I think he is not yet as deep in Kubernetes as he is with PCF. So I'm pretty sure Kubernetes these days is much easier to handle, especially with services and tools that you offer. But do you kind of agree with it that kind of it took a while for Kubernetes to really became more developer friendly, end user friendly, operations friendly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first at the beginning, Kubernetes was quite limited in functionality. You only had at that time, you had pods and replica set. No, not replica controller. There were even not like stateful applications. Now, but on the other side, now as more and more functionality is coming inside of Kubernetes itself, but also if you're looking into the CNCF landscape, it gets more and more. There are so many projects out to figure out what are the right components I want to use, and I think what your colleague is mentioning, like Cloud Foundry is really like a quite opinionated way how to do this, and there's only like one way. With Kubernetes, there are a lot of ways. Of course, we have the common ground to say, okay, we have the Kubernetes API, and that is standardized, but on top of this, there are a lot of capabilities, and I think it will be also interesting to see where this goes in the next years. What workloads will end on Kubernetes, but I think now on Kubernetes, you already have much more capabilities and possibilities, but typically this brings also a lot of more complexity in this game.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, especially as I think you pointed it right out there, there's just so many different ways of doing things in Kubernetes and in achieving one thing, where in other platforms there might have just been one opinionated way, which made it very easy to do and felt very good, but then it obviously limits you to that opinion. In what we see is more and more organizations obviously want to move on Kubernetes, because I think it's clear Kubernetes is one, or it kind of is the popular platform for container-based systems. Now, do you see, working with your organizations, with your customers, are people still or primarily moving existing applications on Kubernetes and just trying to find a different platform to run this on? Or do we actually see more and more organizations actually really building applications the cloud native way to really leverage the power of these platforms?
What we are seeing is mostly, especially when people are starting, especially in the early days, it was more like, okay, we want to build a new modern architecture and not like directly migrating existing stuff. Especially, hey, we want to build microservice architecture. Let's build this completely containerized and run this on Kubernetes. But then the next step was like, okay, let's also move existing workloads on top of Kubernetes. And I think still most of the workload was currently going on Kubernetes is still like own build custom software, which the customer wrote on their own or with some agency wrote for them. I think one of the big moves was currently still not happening, but I think that will come in the future. Will like that vendor software will run more and more on Kubernetes, so that different applications are built from the scratch for running on Kubernetes, and you have complete certified Kubernetes on this certified solution to run it on Kubernetes instead of running it on VMs. And I think that is one of the next steps. What I think will happen, especially that customers are also pushing the vendors to provide them a way how they can run this on Kubernetes. But yeah, then I think what a lot of customers try to do is really with Kubernetes standardizing their operation for new applications, but also that it helps to move legacy applications so that they in the future can potentially have one platform which can run all the workloads they have.
Mm-hmm. And I know this is obviously a tough question to answer, but do you think that is this a future state that we will achieve in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? How long do you think it will take until we actually really see also legacy? So, or let's say, when we will we see a Kubernetes platform that runs all the workloads?
I think when all the workloads will move, I think that will take some time. Mm-hmm. I guess it will definitely take 5 to 10 years that a lot of workloads is migrating. But what we see now, and we did already a survey to our Container Days participants, but also to customers, and because we wanted to figure out how far are they in their cloud native journey. And we see now that first customers have adopted Kubernetes, have done first things into production, and now really start migrating more and more workloads to Kubernetes. And I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we will see a lot more workloads moving to cloud native and Kubernetes. And also then, I guess, also more legacy or existing application will move to Kubernetes, which doesn't every time mean that it's like the same application will move to Kubernetes. It could also mean that the application will be rewritten or new architectured to run in the future in a cloud native way.
Mm-hmm. Now, as you said, if more and more people are moving over to Kubernetes, and obviously we see this with the people we work with the organizations that are our customers, also within our organization, we are building more and more stuff on Kubernetes. I think questions come up is for what are the boundaries of an individual Kubernetes cluster? Do you need a cluster for a certain environment, for a certain set of software, for I don't know, for a the question is really what belongs into one cluster versus where do you need different clusters? What are the boundaries, and also who is responsible for these clusters? Because eventually, if you have a large organization that is building software and you have, let's say, 1,000 applications and 1,000 application development teams, do they all own and run and manage their own Kubernetes clusters in their dev, in their pre-prod, and in their prod environments? Or is there going to be the traditional operations team or platform team that is then providing these things as a service, but they manage everything? Do you have some insights in what large organizations are doing, and especially how they're organizing and how they're organizing their clusters, and who owns them and who is responsible for it?
Yeah, so that's exactly where everything started with our company. So we strongly believe in that you need to manage a lot of Kubernetes cluster across multiple providers in the cloud, on-prem, and the one thing Kubernetes is not really good is really multi-tenancy. So multi-tenancy in a way that it's really hard multi-tenancy. Of course, you have like namespace and airbag capabilities there, and you can do some stuff, but it has quite fast some limitations. And I think every organization need to think about how they want to manage this. Sometimes it could be cut it based on applications. Sometimes it's more like based on their organization. So different teams have their own cluster. But I think what you really need is also like a container as a service operation team, or a team which can really help inside of the organization to operate all this Kubernetes cluster and to manage all this Kubernetes cluster, and also ensure that the operation of these clusters are, or that how these clusters are rolled out are secure and in a way that is compliant with the organization, and that not every developer needs to figure out how do I provide specific policies. Similar what we did in the past with like databases. Not every developer is running their own databases. So we either using managed services from the cloud provider, or we have a database team inside of the organization who are taking care about this. And I think similar can be applied to a general Kubernetes platform architecture, so that you want to have a team who's taking care in general about the Kubernetes cluster, but then that the developer are API driven and having the capability to easily spin up and manage their Kubernetes cluster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I guess I concur with you on this. I guess it makes sense, right? Because in the end, it's just another service that you want to consume, because it should not be the core responsibility or the core. I'm not sure what the right the English term now is. The core competency of developers to also figure all of these things out. That there has to be either if you go with a cloud provider that provides the whole thing as a service, then they're taking care of it. Or if you do it within the organization, you have a part of the organization that provides that container platform as a service, and making sure that the things like security, policies, governance, that this is all taken care of.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you said exactly the word. You want to provide this as a service, and either you consume the service from an external provider, which could be a cloud provider or like an outsourcing provider, or internally you want to provide this as a service to your own organization.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know I guess I have to come back to we see a lot of people that are moving to Kubernetes, and a lot of people have already played around with it somehow. Just talked with folks this week. They have in the magnitude of 1,000 plus Kubernetes clusters running in their environment and managing them. I don't know what additional, let's say, management layer they use on top of it, but from a scale perspective, and you must see a lot of organizations running Kubernetes, do you see what's kind of the spread from organizations that are running 10, 100 clusters, 1,000 clusters, 10,000 clusters? Is there kind of like the size of the enterprise typically tells you how many Kubernetes clusters they will have, or is it more like how their software architecture looks like, how their organizational structure looks like? Do you have any thoughts and ideas on how enterprises typically end up with like in terms of number of clusters and how they manage them?
Yeah, so I think it really depends how far are they on their cloud native journey. So if they are more in the beginning, they run potentially a few clusters, 2, 3, 5, up to 10. If they are already like, especially if it's a bigger organization, and they really have this service idea and really having the capability to provide this to their organization, I think it scales quite fast up so that they run 20, 50, hundreds of clusters. What we see, especially when you look into like the edge, that you easily come up with use cases and rollouts where they're talking about 1,000 or 10,000 of clusters, which needs to be managed.
Mm-hmm. Could you quickly define for me edge? So what are these use cases? What type of apps are running and where?
I think for the edge, there are different use cases. One is like, for example, you have a factory and or you have a few big data centers, but you also want to run stuff inside of your factory with Kubernetes. So you need to deploy Kubernetes in the factory. Another edge use case would be also if you have supermarkets and you want to run in each of the supermarkets a Kubernetes cluster, so you need to run a lot of clusters there. And I think also up to running individual devices on, for example, trucks or inside of specific machines, even like with like Raspberry Pis, this kind of stuff, so that you leveraging containers and the API of Kubernetes to manage your software and lifecycle management of your application.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember also one use case from one of our customers. They ran, funny enough, Kubernetes clusters on their cruise ships. So they have like floating data centers, basically, right? Because they run all of their obviously software that manages everything on that boat, and their platform of choice is Kubernetes. That's also kind of funny. I mean, obviously these days it's a little bit challenging for them. Hopefully they will bounce back after this pandemic is over. But I thought that's an interesting use case.
We need to get a shipping company.
Exactly.
Like using it.
Yeah.
putting a data center into a container and then putting the container onto a ship.
Yeah,
It would
exactly.
be a literal container, containers and literal containers.
Yeah.
And then you'll have to get captain.
Exactly, because you need somebody that steers it into the right port, making sure that everything is.
That'll be a new requirement to be able to captain a ship. You'll have to know captain.
That's true.
And then you need a load for the last miles to get you in the in the Haber.
Yeah. So Sebastian, I hope it's okay that I fire off these questions, because this is just fascinating having somebody like you on the other side, and I can just do this. I hope you're still good with more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Feel free. Yeah. So the other thing. Now I need a pause. I just lost my train of thought. I think that's what it's called. Brian, this would be the first time when you need to cut me out. No. So don't do it. Don't cut me out. This is just, it should be on record. It took me a while. I lost my train of thought, but now I'm back. So if what we've been, I remember I did a lot of talks over the years. Both Brian and I are performance engineers, and we saw a lot of things that people just did wrong. It's like, why, when you build an application, do you make 1,000 database statements if you can do it with a single call? Why are you allocating memory in that way, which shouldn't be done, and then leading to large garbage collection? Now, I assume there's something like this as well with the organizations that you work with, that maybe start with Kubernetes in a certain way, and then they see, it's not scaling, it doesn't work for them, it's slow, they're frustrated, they need something new to manage, and then probably you come in, and then you see maybe what organizations have done wrong from the beginning. So my question is, if something like this is true for the way you see the IT world in the Kubernetes space, what are the, 2 or 3 things that you see people are doing wrong from the beginning, so we can give our listeners a little bit of advice on when they're going down the Kubernetes train and they want to eventually scale this across the enterprise? What do they need to figure out from the beginning? What do they need to do right?
Yeah, I think one of the interesting facts is now everyone is saying, okay, I do cloud native, I do Kubernetes, and I sometimes have the feeling they expect now all the IT problems are solved with this, and even not question themselves if potentially Kubernetes is the right choice for it, or does it still make sense to run the application inside of a VM, potentially because the application is not scalable or is not there. And so really think first, okay, what are my problems? And then think about what are the solutions I'm using, and not starting with like, okay, this is my solution and where are my problems? So really having the idea, what really can Kubernetes gain me on benefits, so that you can really leveraging this. And then I think the next thing is also, if I using Kubernetes, really think about what is my architecture. Is my application really already built for this kind of architecture, or potentially what I need to change on my application itself, that it's really scalable and Kubernetes can provide me the scalability and expectations what I have initially thought about. That's what we see quite a lot, that people throwing the existing application on top of Kubernetes, and that even the application cannot do, for example, rolling upgrades, or cannot run HA. And so when they do an upgrade, it goes down and they have an outage, and they say, yeah, but I'm running it on Kubernetes. Yes, but it's your application. It's not capable to do this, and it's not Kubernetes. You first need to re-architecture and think what needs to be changed on the application, and then you can leveraging this scalability from Kubernetes, that it can do rolling update, or it scale up when you get more workloads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's great advice. So kind of don't prematurely pick Kubernetes just because you think it solves all of your problem. It's like I think the analogy that we often use is, right, if you get a hammer, everything becomes a nail, but that might not be the problem that you need to solve. And then the other thing is with your apps. I remember the same example. One of the people that I talk with, they lifted and shifted one of their Java enterprise apps to Kubernetes. They basically, packed a 4 gigabyte memory heavy WebSphere application server into a container and deployed it on Kubernetes. And then we said, that's great. Now let's scale it up. Well, they said, well, let's roll over to the next version. And then say, well, this takes about an hour or half an hour because of the way the JVM was sized. And then we said, well, then you will never be able to reap any of the benefits of Kubernetes. It just becomes an additional layer of complexity that you don't want.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly a good use case, or probably we see like putting your existing application and the application needs like 5, 10, 20 minutes to really warm up and to get ready. And so to really then scale it, if you have peak traffic, for example, the traffic is already gone until your application is ready. And also like rolling updates with this is quite slowly, because if you have already 3 replicas and takes 20 minutes, you need 1 hour to roll it really out to all the application. And I think that's really, you first need to think about, is it really there? Can I use this? Or have the understanding to say, okay, I know I have some drawbacks in my architecture. I'm doing already the move to Kubernetes, but I cannot expect more out of this. And now I'm running it on Kubernetes, but in the same time, I'm now starting re-architecturing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's hopefully we will have. Hopefully, the people are listening in and that are thinking about moving to Kubernetes really think this through and then do the due diligence and do the research on the apps that they're moving, because just because you are moving on Kubernetes doesn't mean, as you said, not all of your problems go away. The other question that I have, so now obviously you founded your company, and I think I heard this in the podcast. You really tried to listen to people that you worked with, organizations that you work with, and where they ran into challenges, and then really, around that build a product that actually solves problems. Can you explain a little bit for people that have never heard about Kubermatic and kind of the type of problems you solve with your solution? What are the biggest things you're actually solving? Because people may have never heard about that a tool like yours exists, and there might also be others in the market. So we want to be open here, right? That there might be other solutions out there, but I think we want to hear from you now. What are the key things you're solving when it comes to operating and managing large scale numbers of clusters?
Yeah. So when we started the company 4.5 years ago, we saw a pattern with our customers. So they wanted to have a cluster, then they want to have, of course, upgrades of the clusters, and some of them wanted to already have multiple cluster, and some of them also wanted to have like already as a service. So want to provide the developer, in best case, a UI or API where the developers can spawn up the clusters. And at that time, the only solution where you get this out of the box was Google with GKE. Mm-hmm. And so we were thinking, we like the service, but we want to have it anywhere. And so we came up with the idea, can't we really build a solution which can help to manage tens or even hundreds or thousands of clusters across different cloud providers, also on-prem, and now more and more also at the edge in a scalable way. And this is what we started then, really building an application how you can manage Kubernetes clusters, and which was really focusing also on day 2 operation, not like spinning up only the cluster. How can I keep the cluster up and running, that everything is automated, that we do automatically backups of the clusters. If something is happening, that I can recover, and that in best case, I can run a lot of Kubernetes clusters with really less amount of manual work or people involved, so that you can really run this in an automated way. Because especially if you're now thinking about you want to run thousands or 10,000 of clusters at the edge, where you not easily can go and send an engineer to. This really needs to be fully automated. And so that's what we are really believing. Also, if you think about enterprises, you want to roll out some kind of corporate blueprint where you say, okay, a production cluster needs to have like a specific set of requirements. For example, potentially you don't want to expose services on HTTP. It should be encrypted and HTTPS, or you don't want to run privileged containers so that you can really force policies in the cluster, and then okay, all my clusters have at least a specific set of requirements which is fulfilling, and that's what we're doing with our Kubermatic platform to provide this solution. And on the other side, what we also built is Kube1, where you can really managing individual clusters. So we had this. So Kubermatic was built that it's built as an operator and it's running completely on Kubernetes. Mm-hmm. And so we had every time this chicken egg problem, we need an underlying Kubernetes cluster. And so we said, okay, we have mostly all the solutions out, or we have mostly all the components what we need to run also single clusters. And then we started Kube1 to really managing individual clusters so that you can easily spin up a cluster, manage a cluster, and also having another tool to do this where you have less complexity, but in an easier way to manage this and operate this.
Mm-hmm. So this, if I understand the architecture right, that means when you are managing or launching a new cluster, you use an operator to then deploy your management piece of it. That is then making sure that the right things are then really getting rolled out. As you said, maybe even launching a cluster from a template, or I'm not sure what you called it earlier, but making sure it's properly configured. And then obviously this component is then, communicating back to a central Kubermatic platform that is then managing and taking care of all the different clusters where the operator runs. Do I understand this correctly?
Yeah, exactly. So because what we were thinking, like when we started building the application, we were thinking, okay, what is the best way to manage Kubernetes? And we came up with the idea, can't we managing Kubernetes in a cloud native way with Kubernetes? And so at that time, like third-party resource or custom resource definition were not available, but we had the idea, this reconciling and this controller mechanism from Kubernetes are working quite well. Can't we copy this over and use this also to manage our own stuff? And we tried around and it was working. And so we said, hey, that's a great way to manage this because with this we on our own already can using purely Kubernetes and can leveraging all the technologies Kubernetes brings us out of the box to manage itself Kubernetes cluster. And so with this, we had from the beginning on a really good foundation for the architecture, because now we easily can scale this because it only depends on the underlying cluster. And then we can scale this up to a lot of Kubernetes cluster. And what we also do is, like, instead of running the Kubernetes control plane as VMs, we decided we want to run them containerized on top of a Kubernetes cluster, so that in case of errors or something is breaking, it's running in a pod, and Kubernetes takes care and it's restarting the components automatically without that we need to build additional logic around this.
So your control plane runs on Kubernetes, and then obviously you leveraged all the benefits of Kubernetes if you're actually building and architecturing the software the cloud native way. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. I looked at I'm looking at your website right now, and there's just one thing that intrigues me a little bit, I gotta say. It's DevOps automation. Because the reason why it just jumps into my eyes is because I've been talking a lot about DevOps over the last couple of years. I think obviously it's a big term and a lot of people maybe mean different things with it, but
never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Yeah. Let me Google this for you, Mr. Wilson. But I just wonder, just out of curiosity, is this where you are integrating? Where is your story that when you're rolling out, when you're integrating with existing CI/CD solutions, that through your API you make sure that the target clusters, the target environments are there, so these tools can deploy into these clusters? Or do you also actually have some type of continuous delivery solutions as part of Kubermatic?
So our story is really that we want to provide a standardized API which existing solutions can use. And I think what we are seeing also is that we want to enable developer in the future also to create more clusters to, for example, and throw them away, so that you think about new patterns, and instead of having a staging a cluster, potentially create a cluster per each run, spinning up, deploy the components, and after the run, you destroy it, and everything is going in a quite fast way, so that you every time really can start from scratch. But also on parallel, potentially you want to have a staging environment where you can test the existing upgrades, but that you can do both. Or if you need to do a load test or something like this, that you quickly can spin up a new environment, deploy everything on top of this, and then you do the load test, and afterwards you throw everything away, and it don't takes you days to get everything together and sort it out to do so. And so our goal here is really what we're providing is the openness and access of upstream Kubernetes API, and then having an API to manage the cluster so that you can provision these clusters, which is mostly based on cluster API from Kubernetes.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. This sounds like we definitely should also talk around integrating this with our open source project Captain, because Captain is an events-driven control plane where we are orchestrating a delivery process for progressive delivery and also for automating operations. So, and the way we do it, we then integrate with other tools to do a particular job along that process. So if your process is delivery, then the first step is typically provision the environment, make sure the environment is there, then deploy the app in there, then run the tests, and then we do the evaluation of the test. And I can see that an integration through with your API would be great to make sure before we deploy that the environment is there, that we can deploy it. And in case we need to run tests and massive tests, let's say that, where we could even provision the clusters for the testing tool. We talked about load testing earlier. So sometimes these tests obviously then need dedicated environments. So that would actually be really cool. So we definitely need to have a follow-up conversation on that.
Yeah, we definitely should look into how an integration could look like. I mean, Kubermatic is also open source. We could think about how we could combine both this to really gain these benefits.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Sebastian, is there, I know this was now kind of me firing off a lot of questions. Hopefully it all kind of made sense and there was not too many stupid questions in there. But is there anything that we missed? Is there anything that you want to make sure people know about Kubernetes, people know about Kubermatic, people need to know about problems that you're solving?
Yeah, I think one project we didn't talk about is KubeCarrier, which is our new open source project. So what we're seeing now is like, a lot of companies now know, okay, they need to manage Kubernetes clusters, and there's our solution, but also a lot of other solutions out there. But one of the next challenges, what we think are coming up more and more, is like, how can I manage the workloads across all these clusters, especially also with this operator pattern, which is now coming up more and more. And when we think about we want to run 1,000 clusters, and potentially per cluster, I want to run 10 applications. So I need to manage 10,000 applications in most cases. It's then like cloud, hybrid cloud, on-prem, potentially at the edge. And what we really believe in there is like, okay, the next level would be like, how can we help customers to manage this complexity? Because this is what we believe is like really needs to be also heavily automated, because otherwise this whole workload will not really work. And we also really think about, we need to think also there more in this idea of providing services, so that different teams can provide, a team can provide database as a service, another team can provide monitoring as a service, so that it gets easily consumable, and not every area needs to figure out on its own how to plug everything together. And that's exactly where we started building KubeCarrier, so that we can help customers to deploy and manage these workloads across different environments in a scalable way. That you can, for example, have a database in the future, have a database cluster, have an application cluster, and that potentially you even could connect them.
Mm-hmm. How do you spell KubeCarrier? Oh, I found it. KubeCarrier. Okay, perfect. We want to make sure that we also put these things into the proceedings.
Yeah, exactly. You find it when you go to github.com/Kubermatic. There you find all of our open source projects.
Very cool. Brian.
Yes.
Brian.
I'm just sitting here. Oh, I just muted I was on mute and then I unmuted. I was muted. I was unmuted, then I muted. I was opposite. Yeah. No, I've just been sitting here stewing over all of this. So Sebastian, as you could probably tell, I'm on the show because I'm the engineer, and Andy's the brains on the show. But I'm absorbing all this, and I think a lot has really become much more solidified, clear. You know, one of the themes that we hear quite often when we're talking to various people is whether it's you're looking to move to microservices or functionless, serverless functions, or moving to Kubernetes or whatever. The idea is you don't do it unless you have a reason, right? It shouldn't be that, hey, I'm an organization, Kubernetes is hot, we need to move to Kubernetes, or microservices are hot, we need to move to microservices. The first thing is always the idea of evaluating, like, why do we need to move to that? What's it going to give us? And I think today's conversation really helped me understand, just even conceptually, like obviously Kubernetes is, to me, it's pretty obvious conceptually, but it really helped frame it in another way. You know, it's not that Kubernetes makes things easy, because far from it. Kubernetes is very complicated, right? You're managing all of your ingresses, egresses, your network connections, all these different little things going on in it. You still have a humongous role for what would be the sysadmins. But what Kubernetes is doing is giving you flexibility to use more modern architecture, right? It's going to be hard to run microservices on bare metal or even virtual machines, right? So if you're moving to these more modern deployment things, Kubernetes makes sense. But, why I was overwhelmed listening today is that if you're just running bare Kubernetes, it's still going to be overwhelming. You still need a lot of, what, for lack of better words, sysadmins. I know a lot of them like to call themselves DevOps admins, but the people running that system who know the system and knows what's have to be done, whether or not it's done programmatically. I guess most of it in Kubernetes is, but it's really just, to me at least, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say Kubernetes is your new data center model, right? It could have been on bare metal before. Could have been on VMware now. Now you're running it on Kubernetes, which is probably running on one of those two anyway. But that's the next thing that you have to manage. And I think it's really great that, Kubermatic is coming in and taking a lot of that hard work out of it. Because I also see a parallel, Andy, between, I see running, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sebastian, too. I see running Kubermatic or running Kubernetes on your own versus leveraging the help of like Kubermatic is the same or similar to when it comes to monitoring using a well-established APM tool like Dynatrace, or doing the open source, we're going to do it ourselves, right? There's a lot, if you're going to do it yourselves, you can, but there's a lot of work, and there are people out there who are figuring out the management layer of this piece to help you out, to make something like Kubernetes easier to use. Because it just really seems that it can be, there's the mistake of, I see someone like a CTO somewhere says, we're going to move to Kubernetes. And everyone's like, yay. And then they move and they're like, holy crap, we need to hire 4 more people. We all need to train up on this and that, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So I think today's episode really just helps solidify that to me, unless I completely missed it. Did I get it right at least?
I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can also see this with like Linux itself. Like potentially in the beginning, you build your own Linux distribution, but nowadays. I think most of us are not trying to build our own distribution.
Right.
We're using existing tooling, either completely open source distributions, or you want to have vendor support for it. And I think similar patterns applies also for cloud native. But I think what's also important is I think in the whole discussion about cloud native, the tooling is one component of this. I think what people often forget is like you need to change your processes.
Yeah.
If you try to run Kubernetes in the same way as you do it before, it will not work, at least not well. And also, you need to train your people, and because it requires completely new skills. So Kubernetes can only really be, or cloud native can only be really successful if you're also touching the other both components, processes, and your employees and your people to get them on this new journey. Because otherwise, I think the chance is high that it will fail.
Yeah. It seems like, I would think that some people might think Kubernetes is sort of the easy button, but it seems that it's not. The easy button is move all of your software to SaaS vendors, right? But then you're completely restricted to only what they can do. It's not a real solution. I mean, for some things it is, right? I mean, if you're a smaller shop and you want to set up a commerce store, there are plenty of commerce SaaS products out there that are going to be great. But if you're aiming to be the next Amazon or something, you're going to have to build your own, right? You're going to have to do that. So, obviously the easy button is not going to be the solution for a lot of people. And Kubernetes is not an easy button, but again, thanks to people like you, Sebastian, and your company that helps that make it easy. It's just overwhelming, and it really makes me grateful that I'm on the pre-sale side of Dynatrace and no longer on the side that our customers sit on that have to deploy all this stuff. I get to just talk about it and have fun. It's so much nicer. Anyhow, that was my thoughts about the topic. I really, really appreciate you being on. Really, really awesome.
Yeah. Hey, to kind of conclude today's session, Sebastian, I know in these days where we don't travel anymore, we do a lot of events virtually, everything basically virtually. I know you are a CNCF ambassador, at least I believe so, when reading through your bio, and a frequent conference speaker. Are there any places to go where people can find out more about you, what you're doing, where you speak, or how to get in touch with folks from your organization or your open source projects? What are the best places to get started with if they want to get in touch with you?
I mean, to really cover this problem, how to migrate existing applications to Kubernetes. We have, I think, in the next 2 weeks, a webinar. So if you go to our website, you can find this there, where I will talk with one of our engineers about this topic. I'm regular on conferences. You can also find me on Twitter as Scheele. Wait, I think I need to check. Every time mixing up Twitter and GitHub because I have not the same. It's vice versa.
We will make sure that we will add the link to it. S Scheele. I think it's S Scheele. Yeah, I can.
It's S Scheele, exactly, because my Twitter one is Scheele S, so I needed to flip around, and I never know which one I have where. And of course you find me also on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, we'll make sure to link to all these resources. With that. I think that it was, as just to echo what Brian said, very insightful. Thanks for answering all these questions. None of them were scripted. That's why I'm also so happy that you just took all of these questions without without thinking about it and just like talking about and then answering them and not kind of backing out of it. So that's great. And it seems we found some additional to-dos for us in the future, which we will talk about later on once we stop the recording here. But yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Really appreciate it. And I hope we can find some ways where we can do some joint open source work.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Cool.
Right, awesome. Well, thanks everyone for listening. If you have any questions, comments, you can reach us at pure_DT or email us at pureperformance@dynatrace.com, and we'll have links to everything Sebastian in the description in the show, so make sure to check those out. Thanks everyone for listening. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.